What happens when the moon reaches her full radiance and bathes our world in silver light? Does this celestial event merely illuminate the darkness, or does it transmit something far more profound, something that has been quietly programming human consciousness for millennia? Welcome, soul traveler, to the Eternal Library. Today we dive into one of the most profound and enigmatic phenomena that has been hidden in plain sight across every culture, every tradition, and every spiritual path known to humanity: the secret lunar transmissions that occur during each full moon, and how these cosmic broadcasts have been shaping our evolution, our consciousness, and our very DNA since the dawn of time. From the ancient Sumerian astronomers who first mapped these celestial patterns over 5,000 years ago, to the Vedic rishis who called the moon Chandra and understood her as the mind of the cosmic being, to the Egyptian priestesses of Isis who performed their most sacred rituals only under the full moon's light, to the Celtic Druids who knew the moon as the great teacher of cycles and the keeper of time itself, every advanced civilization has recognized that the full moon is not simply a passive reflector of solar light, but an active transmitter of consciousness-altering frequencies that penetrate deep into the quantum field of human awareness. The great Hermetic master Hermes Trismegistus wrote in the Emerald Tablet that, as above, so below, and nowhere is this principle more evident than in the relationship between lunar cycles and human consciousness, for the moon that governs the tides of our oceans also governs the tides of our emotions, our dreams, our psychic abilities, and our capacity for spiritual awakening. But what the ancient mystery schools knew, and what modern science is only beginning to rediscover, is that the full moon serves as a cosmic amplifier, a celestial broadcasting station that transmits specific frequencies designed to activate dormant aspects of human consciousness, to trigger evolutionary leaps in our species, and to download new information directly into our subconscious minds while we sleep. In the Sanskrit texts of the Rig Veda, composed over 3,500 years ago, the seers described Soma, the lunar deity, as the one who fills the mind with inspiration and the heart with divine knowledge, understanding that lunar energy was fundamentally different from solar energy. While the sun represents active, yang, conscious awareness, the moon represents receptive, yin, subconscious programming, the quiet voice that whispers new possibilities into the depths of our being while our rational minds are occupied with other matters. The Chinese Taoist masters of the Han Dynasty, particularly those following the teachings of Laozi and Zhuangzi, developed sophisticated practices around what they called yin meditation, techniques specifically designed to align with lunar frequencies during the full moon phase, understanding that this celestial window offered direct access to what they termed the original mind or wu-wei consciousness, that pristine state of awareness that exists before conditioning, before programming, before the ego mind creates its elaborate stories about reality. These practices, passed down through secret lineages for over 2 millennia, involve specific breathing patterns, visualization techniques, and energetic alignments that allowed practitioners to consciously receive and integrate the lunar transmissions that most humans receive unconsciously. And what were these transmissions exactly? According to the oral traditions of the Tibetan Bonpa shamans, who practiced their lunar ceremonies high in the Himalayas long before Buddhism arrived in Tibet, the full moon serves as a consciousness gateway through which beings from higher dimensions download new evolutionary codes into human DNA, triggering gradual awakenings that unfold over generations. This is why, they claimed, human consciousness has been steadily expanding throughout history, why each generation seems to possess capabilities that previous generations could barely imagine, and why the acceleration of human technological and spiritual development has been exponentially increasing in recent centuries. The great Sufi master Ibn Arabi, writing in 13th century Andalusia, described receiving his most profound mystical revelations during full moon meditations, explaining that the beloved speaks most clearly when Luna's face is unveiled, and developed a sophisticated understanding of what he called lunar gnosis, the direct transmission of divine knowledge through lunar frequencies that bypass the rational mind and implant themselves directly into the heart center of consciousness. This tradition was continued by later Sufi orders, particularly the Mevlevi dervishes founded by Rumi's followers, who performed their famous whirling ceremonies specifically during full moons, understanding that the lunar energy amplified their ability to enter ecstatic states and receive divine communications. In the ancient Egyptian mysteries, particularly those practiced in the temple of Isis at Philae, the priestesses understood the full moon as the eye of Goddess, a cosmic organ of perception that not only observed human affairs but actively influenced them through the transmission of what they called Ma'at codes, divine principles of truth, balance, and cosmic order that were continuously broadcast to humanity through lunar frequencies, with the full moon representing the peak intensity of these transmissions. The hieroglyphic records from the Ptolemaic period describe elaborate full moon ceremonies where initiates would lie in specially constructed chambers designed to focus and amplify lunar energies, allowing them to receive what the texts called the words of Thoth, divine teachings that came not through auditory channels but directly through energetic transmission into their consciousness. The Hindu tradition, particularly as preserved in the ancient tantric texts like the Vijayanagar Tantra and the Spanda Karikas, describes 112 different techniques for conscious communion with lunar energies, understanding that the full moon represents the peak of Shakti, the divine feminine creative force that continuously shapes and reshapes reality through subtle energetic influences. These texts, composed by realized masters over 1,500 years ago, explain that during the full moon, the boundary between individual consciousness and cosmic consciousness becomes most permeable, allowing dedicated practitioners to directly experience what they call Chandra Yoga or lunar union, a state where personal awareness merges with the vast intelligence that governs celestial movements and cosmic cycles. But perhaps nowhere is the understanding of lunar programming more sophisticated than in the shamanic traditions of the Americas, where indigenous peoples from the Arctic Inuit to the Amazon Shipibo have maintained unbroken lineages of lunar wisdom for thousands of years. The Lakota medicine man Black Elk spoke of receiving his most profound visions during full moon ceremonies, explaining that Grandmother Moon carries the messages of the star nations to those who know how to listen with their whole being, while the Hopi elders describe the full moon as a time when the Ancient Ones download new instructions for the next phase of human evolution, instructions that manifest as dreams, visions, synchronicities, and sudden insights that guide individuals and communities toward greater harmony with natural cycles. Modern scientific research is beginning to validate what these ancient traditions have always known. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphic resonance suggests that information can be transmitted across time and space through what he calls morphogenetic fields, invisible information networks that connect all living beings and allow for the rapid spread of new behaviors, insights, and evolutionary adaptations throughout a species, and his research indicates that these morphic fields are significantly amplified during full moons, when the Earth's magnetic field is most strongly influenced by lunar gravitational forces. Similarly, the pioneering research of Dr. Michael Persinger at Laurentian University has demonstrated that human consciousness is exquisitely sensitive to extremely low-frequency electromagnetic fields, exactly the type of fields that are generated by the complex gravitational and electromagnetic interactions between Earth and Moon during lunar phases. His studies show that during full moons, the human brain's temporal lobe region, associated with mystical experiences and psychic phenomena, shows significantly increased activity, suggesting that we are indeed receiving some form of information transmission during these celestial events. The great depth psychologist Carl Jung, drawing on decades of clinical observation, noted that his patients consistently reported more vivid dreams, more intense emotions, and more frequent synchronicities during full moon periods, leading him to develop his theory of the collective unconscious. a shared psychic space where archetypal information is continuously updated and transmitted to individuals through what he called acausal connecting principles. Jung believed that the full moon served as a cosmic trigger that activated these unconscious information downloads, allowing individuals to access knowledge and insights that they had no rational way of obtaining. In the Kabbalistic tradition, particularly as developed by the 16th century mystic Isaac Luria and his school in Safed, the full moon is understood as Makhut Bikolut, the divine presence in full manifestation, the moment when the hidden aspects of reality become most accessible to human perception. The Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism, describes specific meditative practices designed to align with what it calls the light of the moon, divine emanations that carry information about future possibilities, past life connections, and the soul's ultimate destiny, all transmitted through subtle energetic frequencies that penetrate consciousness most effectively during the full moon phase. The Christian mystical tradition, though often suppressed by Orthodox authorities, has always included lunar practices. The Desert Fathers of 4th century Egypt, particularly Evagrius Ponticus and John Cassian, wrote extensively about receiving divine illuminations during full moon vigils, understanding that certain spiritual insights could only be accessed when consciousness was properly attuned to celestial cycles. This tradition was continued by later Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart, who wrote about the divine darkness, mystical states where divine knowledge is transmitted not through intellectual understanding but through direct energetic implantation into the soul. Processes that he observed were significantly intensified during full moon periods. But what exactly is being transmitted during these full moon downloads, and how can we consciously participate in this cosmic communication system? According to the convergent testimony of mystics, shamans, and spiritual teachers across all traditions, the full moon transmissions carry several distinct types of information. First, there are what the Tibetan teachings call evolutionary impulses, energetic codes that trigger the next stage of human development, whether that's the activation of dormant DNA sequences, the opening of new neural pathways, or the awakening of latent psychic abilities. These impulses don't create immediate, dramatic changes but instead plant seeds that unfold over months or years, gradually reshaping consciousness in ways that align with humanity's collective evolutionary trajectory. Second, the lunar transmissions carry what indigenous traditions call ancestral wisdom, information from previous generations, both human and non-human, that provides guidance for navigating current challenges. This might manifest as sudden insights about health and healing, creative inspiration for artistic or technological innovations, or intuitive understanding of how to restore balance in relationships and communities. The Maori peoples of New Zealand describe this as whakapapa transmissions, genealogical knowledge that connects individuals to the wisdom of their lineages, both biological and spiritual, allowing them to access resources and capabilities that they didn't know they possessed. Third, the full moon downloads include what esoteric Christianity calls prophetic visions, glimpses of potential futures that help individuals and communities make decisions aligned with divine will. These aren't fixed predictions but rather probability maps that show the likely consequences of different choices, allowing for more conscious participation in shaping reality. The Sufi tradition refers to these as kashf transmissions, divine unveilings that remove the veils of illusion and reveal the deeper patterns governing apparently random events. The neurological mechanisms through which these lunar transmissions are received and integrated involve several interconnected systems within the human brain and energy body. The pineal gland, often called the third eye in mystical traditions, contains magnetite crystals that are sensitive to electromagnetic field fluctuations, making it a natural receiver for the subtle energy broadcasts that occur during full moons. Research by Dr. Cheryl Kraft at the University of San Francisco has shown that pineal gland activity increases significantly during full moon periods, with elevated production of both melatonin and dimethyltryptamine, DMT, the latter being the same compound that produces mystical experiences during certain shamanic practices. Additionally, the heart's electromagnetic field, which is approximately 60 times stronger than the brain's electrical field, serves as another receiving antenna for lunar transmissions. The Institute of Heart Math's research demonstrates that the heart generates its own neural network, containing over 40,000 neurons that process information independently of the brain, and this cardiac intelligence shows heightened sensitivity to celestial electromagnetic influences during full moon periods. This is why so many mystical traditions emphasize heart-centered meditation during lunar ceremonies, understanding that the heart's electromagnetic field must be properly aligned to receive the full spectrum of available transmissions. The practical techniques for consciously receiving lunar programming have been refined across thousands of years of experimentation by dedicated practitioners. The foundational practice, found in virtually every tradition, involves what could be called receptive witnessing, a state of open, non-judgmental awareness that allows lunar energies to penetrate consciousness without interference from mental commentary or emotional reactivity. This begins with establishing proper physical alignment, ideally outdoors under direct moonlight but equally effective near a window where lunar rays can reach the practitioner. The body should be relaxed but alert, with the spine naturally erect to allow energy to flow freely through the central nervous system. The breathing pattern most conducive to lunar reception involves what the pranayama traditions call chandrabadana or moon-piercing breath, inhaling slowly through the left nostril while keeping the right nostril closed, then exhaling through the right nostril while closing the left. This breath pattern activates the parasympathetic nervous system, shifts brainwave activity into receptive alpha and theta states, and aligns the practitioner's electromagnetic field with lunar frequencies. The optimal rhythm is approximately 4 seconds for inhalation, 4 seconds retention, and 8 seconds for exhalation, continued for at least 21 complete cycles to establish proper energetic alignment. Mental preparation involves what Dzogchen Buddhism calls sky-like awareness, a spacious, unbounded state of consciousness that doesn't grasp at experiences but simply allows them to arise and dissolve naturally. This is achieved by first releasing attachment to any particular outcome or expectation, then expanding awareness beyond the boundaries of personal identity to include the vast cosmic intelligence that governs celestial movements. The practitioner essentially becomes a conscious receiving station, temporarily setting aside individual will and desire to become a clear channel for whatever information wants to be transmitted. The emotional preparation is equally important, involving what Sufism calls fana or ego dissolution, a temporary surrender of personal preferences, fears, and desires that allows divine will to flow unobstructed through consciousness. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions but rather creating enough inner space so that emotional reactions don't interfere with the reception process. Techniques for achieving this state include loving-kindness meditation directed toward all beings, gratitude practices that acknowledge the interconnectedness of existence, and forgiveness work that releases any held resentments or judgments that might create energetic blockages. The actual reception process typically unfolds in several distinct phases. Initially, most practitioners experience what could be called energetic saturation, a subtle but unmistakable sensation that something is downloading into their system. This might feel like gentle tingling throughout the body, waves of warmth or coolness, or simply an inexplicable sense that consciousness is being upgraded or expanded. It's important not to analyze these sensations but simply to witness them with appreciative awareness, allowing the process to unfold according to its own intelligence. As the reception deepens, many practitioners enter what the Christian mystics called contemplative union, a state where individual awareness temporarily merges with cosmic consciousness, providing direct experiential knowledge of universal principles and patterns. During these moments, profound insights may arise spontaneously, not as intellectual concepts but as lived understanding that integrates seamlessly into one's being. These insights often concern the practitioner's life purpose, relationships, health, creative projects, or spiritual development, providing guidance that couldn't be accessed through rational analysis alone. The integration phase, which continues for days or weeks after the full moon transmission, involves allowing the received information to gradually unfold and manifest in daily life. This requires what Tibetan Buddhism calls post-meditation awareness, maintaining sensitivity to subtle inner promptings, synchronicities, dreams, and intuitive flashes that carry fragments of the lunar download. It's during this integration period that the real transformation occurs, as new neural pathways form to accommodate expanded awareness and new behavioral patterns emerge to reflect evolved understanding. Historical documentation of successful lunar programming practices can be found across all advanced civilizations. The Egyptian papyri from Dendera describe monthly ceremonies where initiates would gather in specially constructed chambers during full moons to receive what the texts called the utterances of Ra-Kati, divine transmissions that provided guidance for governing the kingdom, predicting Nile flood patterns, and maintaining cosmic order. These sessions were led by trained priestesses who had undergone decades of preparation to serve as clear channels for celestial communications. The Greek mystery schools at Eleusis incorporated lunar programming into their most sacred initiations, with participants reporting profound visions and insights that permanently transformed their understanding of death, rebirth, and the soul's immortal nature. Plutarch's accounts describe how initiates would experience the greater mysteries during full moon ceremonies, receiving direct transmission of what Plato called true knowledge, understanding that transcends sensory perception and logical reasoning to reveal the eternal principles governing existence. In medieval Europe, despite persecution by church authorities, groups of mystics continued practicing lunar reception techniques in secret. The records of Hildegard of Bingen describe receiving her most profound visions during full moon meditations, visions that provided detailed information about herbal medicine, music therapy, and spiritual healing that was far ahead of her time. Similarly, the Cathars of southern France maintained sophisticated lunar practices that allowed them to access what they called the light transmission, direct communication with what they understood as divine intelligence operating through cosmic cycles. The Islamic tradition preserved these practices through various Sufi orders, particularly the Shadhiliya and Qadiriya, whose masters developed elaborate techniques for lunar communion that produced some of the most exalted mystical poetry and philosophical insights in human history. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, wrote extensively about receiving medical and philosophical knowledge through lunar transmissions, knowledge that formed the foundation for centuries of Islamic scientific and medical advancement. In the Americas, the continuity of lunar wisdom traditions has been maintained with remarkable consistency. The Inca understood the full moon as Mama Quilla, the divine mother who continuously nurtures human consciousness through energetic transmissions. Their temples at Machu Picchu and other sacred sites were precisely aligned to focus and amplify lunar energies during full moon ceremonies, allowing participants to receive what the Quechua tradition calls Ani transmissions, reciprocal exchanges of energy between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence. The Maya developed perhaps the most sophisticated calendar system in human history specifically to track and predict the optimal timing for lunar programming sessions. Their understanding of what they called Kinichaja, the time-space matrix that governs consciousness evolution, allowed them to achieve levels of astronomical, mathematical, and spiritual knowledge that continue to astonish modern scholars. The Dresden Codex contains detailed instructions for lunar ceremonies that were designed to download specific types of information during different seasonal and astronomical configurations. Contemporary research into lunar effects on human consciousness has produced fascinating results that support many traditional claims. Dr. Michael Zemecki's comprehensive review published in Pharmacological Reports documented significant correlations between lunar phases and human physiology, including changes in melatonin production, cortisol levels, and neurotransmitter activity that create optimal conditions for expanded awareness and enhanced receptivity to subtle environmental influences. His research suggests that the full moon period represents a natural window of neuroplasticity when the brain is most capable of forming new neural connections and integrating new information patterns. Studies conducted at the University of Basel have shown that during full moon periods, participants experienced 30% less deep sleep but showed significantly increased activity in brain regions associated with creativity, intuition, and pattern recognition. While mainstream science interprets this as evidence of lunar disruption of normal sleep patterns, researchers familiar with contemplative traditions recognize these findings as evidence of enhanced receptivity to subtle information. Transmissions that occur most effectively during liminal states between waking and sleeping. The electromagnetic research of Dr. Michael Persinger and his colleagues has demonstrated that the Earth's magnetosphere undergoes specific fluctuations during full moon periods that directly influence human temporal lobe activity. The temporal lobes contain neural structures associated with mystical experiences, out-of-body phenomena, and access to normally unconscious chemical signals, suggesting that lunar electromagnetic transmissions might indeed be triggering evolutionary changes in human DNA exactly as traditional cultures have always claimed. His studies show that periods of heightened electromagnetic activity, such as those occurring during full moons, can activate dormant genetic sequences and initiate cellular processes associated with enhanced neural development and expanded sensory capabilities. The practical applications of conscious lunar programming extend far beyond personal spiritual development. Throughout history, leaders, artists, inventors, and healers have used lunar reception techniques to access innovative solutions to complex problems. Tesla credited his most important electrical discoveries to insights received during full moon meditations. Visions that provided detailed information about herbal medicine, music therapy, and spiritual healing that was far ahead of her time. Similarly, the Cathars of southern France maintained sophisticated lunar practices that allowed them to access what they called the light transmission, direct communication with what they understood as divine intelligence operating through cosmic cycles. The Islamic tradition preserved these practices through various Sufi orders, particularly the Shadhiliya and Qadariya, whose masters developed elaborate techniques for lunar communion that produced some of the most exalted mystical poetry and philosophical insights in human history. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, wrote extensively about receiving medical and philosophical knowledge through lunar transmissions, knowledge that formed the foundation for centuries of Islamic scientific and medical advancement. In the Americas, the continuity of lunar wisdom traditions has been maintained with remarkable consistency. The Inca understood the full moon as Mama Quilla, the divine mother who continuously nurtures human consciousness through energetic transmissions. Their temples at Machu Picchu and other sacred sites were precisely aligned to focus and amplify lunar energies during full moon ceremonies, allowing participants to receive what the Quechua tradition calls Ani transmissions. Reciprocal exchanges of energy between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence. The Maya developed perhaps the most sophisticated calendar system in human history specifically to track and predict the optimal timing for lunar programming sessions. Their understanding of what they called Kinichaja, the time-space matrix that governs consciousness evolution, allowed them to achieve levels of astronomical, mathematical, and spiritual knowledge that continue to astonish modern scholars. The Dresden Codex contains detailed instructions for lunar ceremonies that were designed to download specific types of information during different seasonal and astronomical configurations. Contemporary research into lunar effects on human consciousness has produced fascinating results that support many traditional claims. Dr. Michael Zemecki's comprehensive review published in Pharmacological Reports documented significant correlations between lunar phases and human physiology, including changes in melatonin production, cortisol levels, and neurotransmitter activity that create optimal conditions for expanded awareness and enhanced receptivity to subtle environmental influences. His research suggests that the full moon period represents a natural window of neuroplasticity when the brain is most capable of forming new neural connections and integrating new information patterns. Studies conducted at the University of Basel have shown that during full moon periods, participants experienced 30% less deep sleep but showed significantly increased activity in brain regions associated with creativity, intuition, and pattern recognition, while mainstream science interprets this as evidence of lunar disruption of normal sleep patterns. Researchers familiar with contemplative traditions recognize these findings as evidence of enhanced receptivity to subtle information transmissions that occur most effectively during liminal states between waking and sleeping. The electromagnetic research of Dr. Michael Persinger and his colleagues has demonstrated that the Earth's magnetosphere undergoes specific fluctuations during full moon periods that directly influence human temporal lobe activity. The temporal lobes contain neural structures associated with mystical experiences, out-of-body phenomena, and access to normally unconscious information. Persinger's laboratory studies show that exposure to the same electromagnetic field patterns that occur naturally during full moons can trigger profound alterations in consciousness, including experiences of cosmic unity, communication with non-physical entities, and access to information that subjects had no normal way of knowing. Perhaps most significantly, the field of epigenetics is revealing that environmental influences, including electromagnetic fields, can rapidly alter gene expression in ways that affect consciousness, health, and even hereditary traits. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research demonstrates that subtle energy fields can influence cellular behavior more powerfully than chemical signals, suggesting that lunar electromagnetic transmissions might indeed be triggering evolutionary changes in human DNA exactly as traditional cultures have always claimed. His studies show that periods of heightened electromagnetic activity, such as those occurring during full moons, can activate dormant genetic sequences and initiate cellular processes associated with enhanced neural development and expanded sensory capabilities. The practical applications of conscious lunar programming extend far beyond personal spiritual development. Throughout history, leaders, artists, inventors, and healers have used lunar reception techniques to access innovative solutions to complex problems. Tesla credited his most important electrical discoveries to insights received during full moon meditations, describing how technical knowledge would suddenly download into his consciousness with complete clarity and detail. Leonardo da Vinci kept detailed journals of visions and insights received during lunar ceremonies, many of which contained scientific and artistic concepts that were centuries ahead of their time. In the healing arts, practitioners across all traditions have recognized that certain therapeutic insights and healing energies are most accessible during full moon periods. Traditional Chinese medicine includes sophisticated protocols for lunar qi reception, techniques that allow healers to download new understanding of herbal formulas, acupuncture point combinations, and energetic healing methods. These practices continue today in lineages that have maintained unbroken transmission of lunar healing wisdom for over 3,000 years. The creative arts have always been intimately connected to lunar programming, with artists, musicians, and writers reporting that their most inspired works emerge from insights received during full moon sessions. The Romantic poets, particularly Coleridge, Wordsworth, and Byron, were known to conduct group lunar ceremonies where they would receive poetic visions and philosophical insights that shaped the entire Romantic movement. Similar practices have been documented among musicians from Beethoven to John Coltrane, visual artists from Blake to George O'Keeffe, and writers from Yeats to Garcia Lorca. Modern applications of lunar programming techniques are being developed in fields ranging from business innovation to conflict resolution, Executive coaching programs now include lunar reception practices that help leaders access creative solutions and strategic insights beyond conventional analytical thinking. International diplomacy initiatives have experimented with lunar ceremony formats that create conditions for breakthrough communications between opposing parties. Therapeutic communities use full moon gatherings to facilitate group healing processes and collective visioning sessions that generate innovative approaches to social and environmental challenges. The warnings and cautions surrounding lunar programming practices are as important as the techniques themselves. All traditional schools emphasize that these practices should never be undertaken lightly or without proper preparation. The Tibetan teachings warn of lunar madness, psychological instability that can result from attempting to receive cosmic transmissions without adequate mental and emotional grounding. This occurs when practitioners try to force experiences rather than allowing them to unfold naturally, or when they become attached to dramatic spiritual phenomena rather than focusing on gradual, sustainable transformation. The Sufi tradition speaks of nafs interference, ego-driven distortions that can corrupt the reception process when practitioners approach lunar programming with selfish motivations or inflated spiritual ambitions. To prevent this, traditional preparation includes extensive purification practices, ethical refinement, and surrender of personal will to divine guidance. Masters emphasize that lunar transmissions are always in service of collective evolution rather than individual aggrandizement, and practitioners who lose sight of this larger purpose risk receiving distorted or harmful information. Similarly, shamanic traditions warn of lunar seduction, the tendency to become addicted to extraordinary states of consciousness without integrating the received insights into practical daily life. This can lead to spiritual bypassing, where practitioners use lunar experiences to avoid dealing with mundane responsibilities and psychological healing work. Traditional training includes extensive grounding practices and community accountability systems that ensure spiritual experiences translate into beneficial changes in behavior, relationships, and service to others. The physical preparation for lunar programming requires careful attention to diet, sleep patterns, and energetic hygiene. Most traditions recommend beginning preparation at least 3 days before the full moon with lighter eating, elimination of intoxicants, and increased time in natural environments to sensitize the nervous system to subtle energetic influences. The Ayurvedic tradition provides specific dietary guidelines for lunar practice periods, emphasizing foods that enhance ajas, vital essence that supports spiritual receptivity, while avoiding substances that create mental agitation or emotional turbulence. Sleep patterns should be adjusted to allow for natural alignment with lunar rhythms. This often means going to bed earlier and rising before dawn during the 3-day full moon period, creating space for extended meditation sessions during the peak transmission hours between midnight and sunrise. Many traditions recommend sleeping outdoors or near open windows during this period to maintain direct energetic connection with lunar frequencies. Energetic hygiene practices include regular cleansing of the aura and chakra system through techniques like smudging with sacred plants, salt water baths, and visualization exercises that clear accumulated psychic debris that might interfere with clear reception. The Hatha Yoga tradition provides specific asana sequences designed to align the spine and open the subtle energy channels that serve as reception pathways for lunar transmissions. These practices typically emphasize gentle backbends that open the heart center, forward folds that calm the nervous system, and inversions that facilitate the movement of subtle energies through the crown chakra. The environmental considerations for optimal lunar reception include finding locations with minimal electromagnetic pollution from electronic devices, power lines, and wireless communication systems. While urban practitioners can still receive transmissions, rural or wilderness settings provide much clearer reception conditions. Traditional practice sites were typically chosen for their natural electromagnetic properties, often including proximity to underground water sources, mineral deposits, or geological formations that enhance the Earth's natural receptivity to cosmic influences. Creating sacred space for lunar programming involves both physical and energetic preparations. The physical space should be clean, comfortable, and dedicated specifically to spiritual practice. Many traditions recommend constructing temporary altars or meditation circles that honor the four directions, the elements, and the spiritual lineages that have preserved these practices. Offerings of flowers, crystals, water, and sacred substances help establish proper energetic conditions and demonstrate respect for the cosmic intelligences involved in the transmission process. The energetic preparation of space involves invocation practices that invite beneficial spiritual presences and establish protection from any potentially disruptive influences. This typically includes calling upon spiritual teachers, guides, and guardians associated with lunar wisdom traditions. The Tibetan approach involves extensive visualization and mantra practices that create what they call Buddha field, a purified space where divine transmissions can occur without interference. Similar techniques are found in all traditions, adapted to their specific cultural and symbolic frameworks. Group lunar programming sessions, while more complex to organize, can provide exponentially more powerful results than individual practice. When multiple practitioners align their consciousness and intention, they create what Rupert Sheldrake calls morphic field amplification, a collective receiving station that can access much more complex and comprehensive transmissions than any individual could receive alone. However, group practice requires careful attention to group dynamics, shared intention, and skilled facilitation to prevent ego conflicts or energetic disruptions from compromising the reception process. The integration work following lunar transmissions is perhaps the most important aspect of the entire process. Without proper integration, even the most profound experiences remain merely interesting memories rather than transformative spiritual development. Integration begins immediately after the reception session with detailed journaling of any images, insights, sensations, or communications that occurred during the practice. This journal should be maintained for several weeks, following each full moon to track how the received information unfolds and manifests in daily life. Dream work becomes particularly important during the post-transmission integration period, as much of the downloaded information continues processing through the unconscious mind and emerges through symbolic dream imagery. Keeping a dream journal and working with dream interpretation techniques helps decode the messages and guidance contained in lunar transmissions. Many traditions include specific dream yoga practices designed to maintain conscious awareness during sleep states, allowing practitioners to continue receiving transmissions throughout the night. The gradual lifestyle changes that typically result from consistent lunar programming practice reflect the deep transformative power of these cosmic downloads. Practitioners often report spontaneous shifts in dietary preferences toward more natural, high-vibration foods. Sleep patterns naturally align with circadian rhythms. Relationships evolve toward greater authenticity and spiritual compatibility. Career changes emerge that bring work into alignment with soul purpose. Creative abilities expand dramatically, psychic sensitivities increase, and overall life direction shifts toward greater service to collective human evolution. The scientific validation of lunar programming effects continues expanding as research methodologies become sophisticated enough to measure subtle energy phenomena. Quantum field theory provides theoretical frameworks for understanding how information can be transmitted across space without conventional physical mediation. The discovery of quantum entanglement demonstrates that particles can maintain instantaneous communication across vast distances, suggesting that human consciousness might be quantum entangled with cosmic intelligence systems operating through celestial cycles. Biofield research using instruments like the GDV, gas discharge visualization, camera shows measurable changes in human energy fields during lunar ceremonies, with participants displaying significantly expanded and more coherent biofield patterns during and after reception sessions. These changes correlate with enhanced creativity, improved health markers, and increased psychological well-being in the weeks following lunar programming sessions. Brainwave monitoring during lunar practices reveals specific neural signature patterns that distinguish authentic transmission states from ordinary meditative states. EEG recordings show unique combinations of gamma wave activity, associated with expanded awareness and mystical experiences, synchronized with theta rhythms, associated with deep receptivity and subconscious processing. These neural patterns match descriptions found in traditional texts with remarkable accuracy, providing objective validation of subjective experiences reported by practitioners across different cultures and historical periods. The future implications of widespread conscious participation in lunar programming could represent a quantum leap in human evolutionary development, as more individuals learn to consciously receive and integrate cosmic transmissions. The collective human morphic field becomes increasingly aligned with higher dimensional intelligence. This creates positive feedback loops where each generation has access to more advanced spiritual technologies and cosmic information than the previous generation. Contemporary research into collective consciousness, particularly the Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University, suggests that when large numbers of humans focus their attention simultaneously, measurable effects occur in quantum random number generators worldwide. If significant portions of humanity began synchronizing their consciousness with lunar cycles through programming practices, the collective impact could potentially shift the entire trajectory of human civilization toward greater harmony, wisdom, and cosmic alignment. The environmental healing potential of large-scale lunar programming participation also deserves consideration. Traditional teachings suggest that human consciousness in proper alignment with cosmic cycles can influence weather patterns, geological stability, and ecological balance. While this might sound fantastical to modern scientific materialism, indigenous cultures worldwide have extensive documented histories of using ceremonial practices to restore environmental harmony during times of crisis. The combination of ancient wisdom and modern understanding of quantum field effects suggests that coordinated lunar programming sessions could indeed contribute to healing damaged ecosystems and restoring planetary balance. The ultimate goal of lunar programming practice, according to all authentic spiritual traditions, is not personal aggrandizement or the accumulation of psychic powers, but rather the gradual alignment of human consciousness with divine will and cosmic intelligence. This alignment naturally results in what the Bodhisattva tradition calls compassionate service, spontaneous action that benefits all beings without concern for personal recognition or reward. As practitioners develop greater sensitivity to cosmic transmissions, they simultaneously develop greater awareness of their interconnectedness with all life and their responsibility to contribute to collective healing and evolution. The mystery schools have always taught that advanced spiritual development inevitably leads to service as a bridge consciousness. Individuals who can receive higher dimensional information and translate it into forms accessible to others who are not yet prepared for direct cosmic communication. This is the true purpose of spiritual teachers, artists, healers, and visionary leaders throughout history, to serve as conscious intermediaries between cosmic intelligence and collective human understanding. As we conclude this exploration of lunar programming and the hidden messages transmitted during every full moon, remember that this knowledge is not merely intellectual information but rather an invitation to direct personal experimentation and discovery. The cosmic intelligence that has been broadcasting through lunar frequencies for millions of years is waiting for conscious human participants who can serve as clear channels for evolutionary guidance and healing wisdom. Every full moon represents a new opportunity to align with this vast intelligence and contribute to the ongoing transformation of human consciousness. The practices outlined here represent time-tested methods preserved by spiritual traditions worldwide, but ultimately each practitioner must discover their own unique way of participating in cosmic communication systems. Begin with simple receptive meditation during the next full moon, maintain detailed journals of your experiences, and gradually develop the sensitivity and skills necessary for clear reception. Remember that this is not entertainment or spiritual materialism, but rather sacred work that carries responsibility for using received guidance in service of collective healing and evolution. If this journey into the mysteries of lunar programming has resonated with your soul, share this wisdom with fellow seekers who are ready to explore the deeper dimensions of cosmic consciousness. Join our community of truth explorers who are committed to conscious participation in humanity's evolutionary awakening, and let us know in the comments what aspects of this lunar wisdom call to your spirit, for the path of cosmic communication is walked most effectively in fellowship with other dedicated practitioners. Thank you, soul traveler, for joining this exploration of the hidden messages that arrive with every full moon. May you develop the sensitivity to receive these transmissions clearly, the wisdom to integrate them beneficially, and the compassion to share their gifts in service of all beings who are walking the path of awakening together.